Hi, good afternoon. I am Rebecca Carter with United Way of Greater Nashville. I am the Director of Community Impact here, and I've been with United Way for the past 15 years. I do have a couple volunteers with me today that are joining us, and I will introduce them once we get towards the end of our presentation before the panel discussion. So I guess first, I just wanted to welcome everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about how United Way mobilizes resources for impact in our community. So let's get started. So today's goals are to overview the outcome-based investment process, understand the role of the volunteer, and review the impact opportunity in United Way of Greater Nashville's footprint. This is just a graphic that helps to explain the outcome-based investment process and how funding flows into United Way and then gets out to the community. As you can see, there are different ways that funds come into United Way. The greatest way that funds come in is through our donors and campaigns that are hosted by our campaign team. But then we also do write some grants. We have some local, state, and federal grants that help to bring additional funds to the work that we do. And then you can see there are different ways that money goes back out to the community. Some funding goes out through designations that are direct to a nonprofit. Some funding goes out through a community fund, which is a competitive application process. And then other funding goes out through grants that we receive and pass through to other agencies through what we typically refer to as initiative work. With our community fund, when funding comes into United Way through donors through our campaign, that money is then allocated out through an application process. And local agencies in our footprint, they have to be located within one of the 9 counties that United Way of Greater Nashville serves. But when those agencies seek funding from us, they go through a process. We have volunteers that review the applications, that conduct agency interviews, and that make those funding decisions. And then we make investments specifically around kind of the broader categories are education, financial stability, and health. But you can see here, it breaks it down a little bit more into what we're hoping to do with that money. Break the cycle of poverty, give kids an equal chance. So that's really focused more on education, build strong and healthy communities, and then also meet our neighbors' basic needs. So the process for an agency applying to United Way through that competitive application process is a fairly lengthy process. Inside the Community Impact Department, we start working about 6 months out before the application is released to the community. And these are just the steps that we go through as we're preparing for that, and then the steps that we go through once the application has been released. So you can see here the very first step is research and literature review. So United Way staff who are here in my department, we conduct the review. We read a lot of different articles, journals. We look for data that will help to just inform what the landscape looks like in our local community, but also statewide and nationally. And then we do some different engagement with community stakeholders and receive partner feedback. We look at outcomes framework development, so that helps to inform our partners of what we're looking for. We release an application. We do an agency eligibility review to make sure that an agency is eligible for application. We review the application, we conduct agency interviews, and then last but not least, the funding decision is made. So we're going to break that down a little bit more in detail. So with research and literature review, the community impact team members review the literature to better understand best practices that help to strengthen education, financial stability, and health outcomes in our community. We also review data, like I mentioned earlier, at the local level, but also statewide and nationally to look for any gaps or trends. And that oftentimes just helps to inform what United Way wants to invest dollars in. Next, we do some listening sessions. We host multiple listening sessions and roundtable conversations to capture the community's voice and to better understand what is important in each of the communities that we serve. We also try to gain perspective on what drives stakeholder engagement and try to capture their commitment to work collectively with United Way. And then along with that, we also engage our funded partners through surveys, listening sessions, and roundtable conversations so that we can better understand their needs, any gaps in services, and really the priorities of those funded partners who are doing the work on the ground. So we try to get as much information we can from all the different resources. Next, I mentioned that we create what's called our outcomes framework. This is really what guides our applicants in understanding what United Way wants to invest in and how they can produce the most successful application for our process. So based on all the research and feedback that we had gathered, we create the outcomes framework, and that's done internally through our department. And it really just kind of offers a roadmap to those agencies. The outcomes framework, I don't know how well you can see it here. This is just a sampling of the first page of it. And this has to do with our health outcomes, but it outlines what the actual outcome is. So in this case, the first one is to increase health knowledge. It helps to define what that means. It shows data collection guidance on how we would like for them to track and measure that information. And then it helps to outline what they're going to have to report to us when they report. And any funded partner of United Way submits a report every 6 months. And that's really how we just monitor the effectiveness of our investment. And we also, in addition to that, which I don't think I included it on this slide, another part of our monitoring once an agency is funded is through partner check-ins. And that's just another touch point that we have with our agency partners to try to troubleshoot or better understand the work that they're doing. So next is our application, interview, and rubric development. So our volunteers engage in several different pieces of the process. The first is based on the application. So our agencies receive the application. There are 4 main sections to the application. The first is just an agency overview where a volunteer can get to know more about the agency, their mission, and just kind of a big picture of that organization. The second form is an outcomes form, which is where they have identified which of those outcomes on the outcomes framework best aligns with the work that they do. The third section is where they describe the services and the outcomes through a narrative process. So hopefully they bring that application to life and we can start to better understand the impact that that investment would make for that agency. And then finally, there's a section where they indicate how those funds would be used. What counties would they be focusing on? What outcomes are they, like how much money is going to support each outcome that they've selected. We also have a process for our interview. And the volunteers, when they go to the agency or the agency comes to us, they find out a little bit more about their history of service delivery, how they intend to use the funds and what the funds are going to be used for specifically. And then they have an opportunity to ask any questions that were outstanding from that application. So with all of that, we develop a rubric in order to better assess and provide a fair balance, I guess you could say, between all of the applications. We review a lot of applications. So knowing that we have a rubric that's a really solid rubric, score-based, to at least send us in the right direction is really helpful. So our rubric looks at several different elements. The first being mission alignment, their program delivery and best practices that they have discussed in the application, staff development and support, how they use data to not only inform their work, but to also improve the work that they're doing, and then their history of operation and outcome achievement. So those are all things that are scored when the volunteers review their application and complete the scoring rubric. Then at the interview, we take the information they've shared at that to really look at an agency's capacity, operations, and administration effectiveness, and then their ability to answer our questions that we had from the application. So those are the key elements involved in what the volunteer does with that review. I will mention, before they get to the opportunity to apply, we do ask them to complete an agency eligibility review process. And that process just allows us to make sure that that investment in that organization is going to be a sound investment. So some of the things that we look for and require is that an organization be a 501c organization or a tax-exempt organization, and they do have to provide their IRS determination letter. We also look to see if they have a local presence in one of our now 9 counties. So we just recently added Stewart, Montgomery, and Houston County. And then we also have Robertson, Cheatham, Dixon, Hickman, Williamson, and Davidson County. So any agency applying for United Way funding from Greater Nashville would have to have a local presence in one of those 9 counties. They would have to have a board of directors and also document the board of director meetings and engagements. They would need to file the proper forms with the IRS. We also look if they have conducted an annual independent audit or a certified financial review, depending on their budget size. They are required to have a charitable solicitations letter with the state of Tennessee. And we also ask that they have a current givingmatters.com profile. That is all a part of the agency eligibility review process. And we do have a group of volunteers that helps us with that process. Anytime there is an organization that can't meet these requirements, then we have a group of CPAs who will come along beside us and meet with these organizations to better understand what they need to do to pass agency eligibility review, and then give us a better perspective on how quickly something like that could happen. So the actual application review process happens through an online portal that we use. It's called EC Impact. Our volunteers, we recruit all of our volunteers in usually late fall. And then in early spring, we offer a training. We help walk them through EC Impact and how EC Impact works. Once the applications have been submitted and they're done with their training, we start to assign them applications, and they're typically grouped. So a volunteer wouldn't have one application about health outcomes, one about education outcomes, and one about workforce development outcomes. They would kind of be grouped together so that when they're reviewing something, they would all be in a similar vein. And so we assign those applications to the volunteers, anywhere from 4 to 8 applications, depending on the length of the application and how they group. I would say one application probably takes about 30 minutes to review, and the volunteers typically will have about 3 weeks to complete their review process. Everything is done online through EC Impact, so it's really easy for them to get on, read the application, The rubric is right there next to it, so they can reference the application, score the application. This process probably takes the training is about an hour and a half, and then if they had 4 applications, it would be about 2 hours that they would spend on that review process. So up until this point, they might have spent anywhere from 3 to 5 hours working as a volunteer to support the community impact funding process. So next, we do conduct the agency interviews. And so the volunteer teams, like I mentioned before, go out to the agencies, or depending this past year, because of the number of applications each volunteer was reviewing, we had the agencies come to us in Davidson County, but in our surrounding counties, the teams went out to those agencies. We hope in the future we'll be able to go to all the agencies, but this is an opportunity for the volunteers to really put that paper with a face and with an agency, and to see what the agency really looks like in real life, I guess. So volunteers will conduct the interviews. They have an opportunity to ask questions, get any clarification. And then the whole process for the interview is very short. We kind of created it like, we had the idea from like Shark Tank. So it's quick, and we just want, quick answers, nothing. We don't want PowerPoint presentations and all that kind of stuff. Really just need to get our answers to any questions that we had, and give the agency like a quick minute to shine. So that happens with our volunteers toward the end of the process, before they start to make their funding decisions. So then the most exciting part, I think, is that funding making decision. So our volunteers come together for 2 different meetings. Each of those meetings lasts about 2 hours. And at these meetings, we review all the programs or all the agencies that have requested funding, and we also establish rules for that investment. The first meeting really is an opportunity for the volunteers to level set. So 3 or 4 volunteers will review the same grouping of applications. And so all those volunteers will come together. They'll have a discussion. We'll look at the different scores. If there's a lot of disparity across the volunteers, then it's really an opportunity to come to some consensus on how that agency performed compared to others. And then the second meeting, we take all that information from the first meeting and put it together in a document that makes it a little bit easier for the volunteers to see everything that's going on. And then at that second meeting, the volunteers look at the total investment portfolio, and based on that total investment portfolio, they make recommendations and modifications. So in some cases, funding might increase a little or decrease a little, depending on the volunteer feedback, whether, an agency provides a unique service, maybe it's a growing need, it's a circumstance that the volunteer group heard about in an interview that wouldn't have been obvious to the whole group. So it's really just an opportunity for all of the volunteers to come together and collectively make a decision on how they want those funds invested. And that also, both of those meetings take about 2 hours. So all in all, you could volunteer with United Way for this process, and from beginning to end, it would probably take about 8 hours of your time. A lot of it is very on your own time, so you can pick when it's convenient to review the applications. We offer multiple trainings. We also have a video on the training. So the 2 hours for each of the meetings, so a total of 4 hours, is pretty set in stone. You would need to be available for that, but everything else is quite flexible. So then in terms of our impact, all of this work that the volunteers do translates to some pretty amazing stuff. So this funding cycle that began July of this year, and it will go through June of 2025. So right now we have a 2-year funding cycle. I think it's just important to mention that, because of how long it takes to actually run a request for proposal process and do our due diligence in that process, we have funding every 2 to 3 years. So right now we're doing a 2-year investment cycle because we wanted to be able to make sure to bring in our 3 new counties into the next process sooner rather than later. But typically we would probably run a 3-year investment process. And so right now our investment is across those 9 counties. We have 151 funded partners, and we invested a little over $8.7 million, almost, a little over $8.7 million in those 9 counties. So we're really excited about the investment that our volunteers were able to make. And we get to now watch how those agencies perform over the next 2 years. This is just a quick snapshot from our annual report that shows how our agencies in 2022 performed. And this was based on 109 funded partners throughout the greater Nashville community. So you can see here that the impact that our volunteers make when they make these investments is huge. And the service that our partners are bringing to this community is just amazing. I did include here a link to our website. I'm not actually sure if I click on it, if you will actually see where I go to, but let's give it a try. Maybe it'll work. I think I may have to reshare. Felicia, can you see our website, or is it still on my slide?
Just the link is showing. I can't see the website.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing and share again, just so you guys can see. On our website, we do have our partners listed there. So all the work of our volunteers translates to our funded partners. And on this page of our website, you can see each of the funded partners. You can sort by county. You can sort by their primary service delivered, or by the services that we are funding for them. And you can click on them and go straight to their website if you want to learn more about our funded partners and the work that they are doing in the greater Nashville community. And now I'm going to jump back, see if I can get there. All right, back to my PowerPoint. And I would love to introduce 2 of our volunteers. I'm not sure that Shakira made it on today, so if she's out there, just give me a shout. But Felicia Sims with Cat Financial and Leticia Johnson with the Tennessee Titans are here today to join me and just talk a little bit about their volunteer experience with United Way. So I guess my first question for you ladies is, why did you decide to volunteer? And we can start with Leticia.
I knew you would. I unmuted myself. I volunteered because I thought it was just a great opportunity, one, to meet other people in the community who want to help the Nashville and greater Nashville community. And then 2, just to be a representative from the Titans to just show that we care more about just winning football, that is more, we want to be in community engagement. We want to see the community thrive. And this is a great opportunity to share those things.
That's fantastic. And the Titans are a great partner of United Way. And I mean, winning football is not a bad thing. We want to do.
It is not bad.
Yes. Felicia, tell us a little bit about why you decided to volunteer.
I wanted to, it was a time where I wanted to do something to give back. And working with United Way gave me that opportunity. And I've had the opportunity to see the different ways we have grown as volunteers over the years, and the things we do, and how we visit the agencies and see what they're doing. It makes what we're doing so much more important. And you feel, when you walk away from volunteering, you feel like you're really doing something.
Yeah,
And that's the part I was looking for. I wanted to do something in the community within my spectrum of time. And that's what it offered me. So, yeah, I'm glad I became a volunteer.
that's great. And I cannot remember, I feel like you have volunteered with us for as long as I have been at United Way.
Yes, I started volunteering in 2006.
Okay. So I came here in 2008. So yes, well, we appreciate you. And we have some volunteers who have volunteered with us for 20, 30 years, and then we have some that are brand new. So it's a great mix. Those more seasoned volunteers have probably seen, like Felicia, you just mentioned, a lot of changes over the years. And just as we learn about other best practices in fund management, we try to impart those same guidelines on our work. So that's great. Thanks, you guys. So you just touched on this a little bit, but can you guys talk a little bit more about what it means to be a part of this review process? Leticia?
Sure. So just getting to going through all of the information, it didn't seem like it took 2 hours. It didn't seem like we did it for 8 hours because there's so much that you get to learn. But just going through all the different agencies, and then when you get to put who they are with the information that's on the paper, it actually, in some cases, would change our minds. We would meet them. They would come in with their own personal stories that they share with us. I think Gilda's was one of the ones that my team did. And when they came in to share some of the stories that they did, it totally just makes you go, okay. And that's all the money that you're asking for, because it's just a good opportunity to hear what some of those nonprofits do, how they get their funding. Some of them don't get any funding at all, and they absolutely rely on this grant that they get from you all. So it was really neat to be a part of that process and just kind of find out how that money goes across all of the different. There's so many you can't even all get them in there, but just really neat to see how that money is dispersed amongst them.
Yes, it is. I can imagine it is a very hard decision for our volunteers to make. Well, I mean, I've witnessed it. It's definitely a hard decision. I have the pleasure of working with, in my portfolio specifically, I have 31 of our funded partners. But because of my time at United Way, I've had an opportunity to work with almost every partner that we fund. And every day, I might go to a breakfast or I might hear a presentation out in the community. And it's hard to not want to give my own money to every single one of our funded partners because they're doing such great work every day. So I cannot imagine how hard that decision is for our volunteers. Let's see, Felicia, will you talk a little bit about why you might encourage others to volunteer and get involved?
Well, the reason why is because it's an opportunity to help others. Many people say, oh, I might have the money, but I don't have the time. Well, here's a way for you to get involved. And by giving your dollars, if you look around Nashville, you see them at work. You don't necessarily have to know that, oh, it's that, but as volunteers, we do. But it reaches so many people without all the begrudgery of having to go somewhere and do something. Yes, there's other ways to volunteer, but this is a way to give back. And when I go back to Caterpillar, I always let them know that what we do here, because we have a big campaign and we have lots of fun doing it, our dollars that we give are not in vain. And knowing that one, United Way is an organization that we can trust. That's important, especially when people give their dollars. You have to be able to trust that what you're doing, what you say you want to do with it, is going to happen. And that's the best part, is the trust. You can trust United Way to do what they say they were going to do. The processes are in place. And those things are very important, especially in these times. So I go back and I always say, oh, don't worry about it. United Way got it. I tell other people, you hear people in the community, It gives you that opportunity. You hear people in the community. It makes you a smarter citizen. That's the way I look at it. It makes me smarter because now being part of this process, I actually know that there's help out there and I can send other people to that help. I didn't know that at first.
Yes, definitely. Well, and I'm so glad that you mentioned Caterpillar and y'all's campaign. Caterpillar does an amazing job with their campaign. So much fun. I mean, y'all are so creative. We've done 5Ks. And it's interesting, the relationship with United Way and Caterpillar. I mean, it goes back years and years, but I remember so vividly in 2010, following the flood, we were not able to get into our office at Metro Center. And we actually set up shop at Caterpillar on West End. And we had every one of our employees in a giant conference room. It was like a huge command center. And it was just a great opportunity to be able to work alongside you guys. And we just really appreciate everything that Caterpillar does for us and the community as well. So let's talk a little bit more. Leticia, as a result of your experience, do you have a story that you could share about the impact that you've seen with some agencies and how it has maybe changed people's lives?
Yes. So one of the agencies that we reviewed in my group was the Nashville Food Project. And here at the Titans, we go to different places, we pack boxes, we always try to volunteer. While I was at one of those, I was talking to someone from a different team. It was the Predators. And she was talking about they need another partner they're looking for. So I interested her in the Nashville Food Project, and now they're working with them. They're donating food, they're giving back and trying to just figure out more ways to be involved with that, because they take the farm items and they give them out to the community. And I just thought that was really neat that it's really grown here in Nashville. It really goes to people in Nashville who need it. And they're fresh foods that some people may not have the opportunity to have resources to get that. So it's great. Now the Predators are donating, we're donating, everybody's donating. It's great.
Yes, that's awesome. And all of our event venues in Nashville, there's so much opportunity just to give back. And we have such a generous sports community. Just everything that the Titans do. I remember probably about 7 or 8 years ago, we hosted a big baby shower over at the Titans practice complex. And I think that I'm going to get this so wrong because I don't know like all the positions in football, but I think like the linemen and the defensive guys, they all had contests on who could bring in the most like diapers or onesies. And it was so funny to see these big, humongous guys really competitive over baby products. And then they came and packed it all. So it was a lot of fun. So even the contribution that y'all's companies make to United Way go so far beyond this volunteer work that you guys do with us. And we're just so grateful for that. Felicia, do you have a story about an agency or how one of the agencies that you've reviewed has really changed lives?
Yeah, so I'm trying to, there's been so many different ones throughout the years. But when you work with the education, with the children, and how it changed lives, I'm going to back up to the agency itself. We would go in to review the agencies with their actual goals that they would have. And the fact that they was receptive to those. I got a chance to work with Pencil. And because of that, I got to actually be principal for the day, which was so much fun. And I got a chance to go to Hume Fogg and to see those children at work and how brilliant they are and what they're doing. And it's all because they have someone in their lives, like a Pencil, that's, those agencies that are working with them, making sure that they have the needs met that they normally don't. And that's all over, not just that school, but that was actually the day that I went to go there. So being able to see that footprint of United Way. Yes, it's a footprint of United Way, but it's also a footprint of the Titans. It's a footprint of the Predators. It's a footprint of Caterpillar. We're just everywhere because as our dollars go through United Way and United Way through the agencies, that's a piece of us that's helping the community. And so we're impacting lives everywhere we go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can see you as a principal.
It was fun. I got a chance to do it 2 days. One time with the high schoolers and another one with the elementary. So yeah.
Oh gosh, I think I would opt for elementary over high school. High school might be a hard ticket. I have 2 teenagers, so whew, they were so much easier when they were little. Well, thank you guys so much for that. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we go to any questions that people might have?
I think if anybody gets the opportunity to volunteer, whether it's going to the United Way and volunteering in events that you have going on, getting in a 5K, being asked to do this, any way you can get involved, just like Ms. Felicia said, we all think we don't have the time, but this didn't even really require a time commitment that I felt. I was doing it while I was working, I was reviewing stuff, and I got with my team. This is something that you can very easily do. And like she said, not have to go physically somewhere every single time. And you always still feel like you're giving back, because when you get to hear from those community leaders and how thankful they are that they've gotten this money, like the celebration for that, it was amazing. So to see that they get that and to know that you were involved in helping them get those dollars, it's an amazing feeling. If you get asked, I would not say no.
Thank you. Well, I did include some information if anyone is interested in volunteering with the Community Impact Department. You can definitely shoot me an email. We won't open up our application process until next fall, but occasionally we have other opportunities and we'll reach out and ask you to maybe review some special funding opportunities for us. And then also, if you know of an agency in the 9-county footprint that we serve who might be interested in applying in the future, please send them my way. Or actually, I think Renee, if you'll have them email Renee, she'll get them added to an email list. And as those opportunities open up, we will make sure to get information out to them. So let's open it up for some questions. If there are any, I have not been monitoring. Oh, I don't see anything in the chat. So are there any questions from anybody? We just covered all the information so well. Nobody has questions. Well, we are delighted that those of volunteer time commitment. About 8 hours, I would say, is the average. And like Felicia and Leticia said, like a good portion of that time is something you can manage on your own. When you review the applications, when you do the volunteer training, 4 of those 8 hours are pretty fixed because that's when the whole groups come together and we're trying to coordinate 50 or 60 people all at one time. That's the other thing. This past year, we had about 50 volunteers. We probably could stand to have 100. So we are looking for a lot more volunteers. Our volunteers this past cycle reviewed a lot of applications. I think everybody had about 8 applications that they had to review. And ideally, we'd like for you to have 4. If we have more like 4, then we can go out to the agencies to do agency visits. But because they had so many applications, we had to stick with having the agencies come to us, just because we didn't want our volunteers to have to take extra days off to go to all those agencies. So the 2 big meetings and then the day of the interviews, But we work with your schedule. We ask you, like, what's the best day for you? What absolutely doesn't work? Tell us, where things are going to work out well for you. And so we try to work with our volunteers to figure out how we can work around their schedule. Well, if there are no other questions, there's a question in Q&A. Let me see how I get there. Oh, look at that. Y'all touched on this some, but what advice do you have to write the most compelling application? So I think I have led this process for United Way for the past 15 years. And the one thing that I see pretty consistently is applicants not using the tools that we give them to help write their application. So we provide the outcome-based framework, which defines what we're looking for. If an agency hasn't really spent some time reading that, then a lot of times their responses in the application don't really align with what we're looking for. So the best example I can give of that, we have an outcome that is focused on social emotional learning. And social emotional learning can happen in a lot of places and contexts. But for us, it happens in early learning centers. So 0 to 5 years old. So when we see an application for a youth serving organization and they have selected social emotional learning as one of their outcomes, then it tells me they probably didn't read that document to better understand what we were looking for. So that's just one example. So I would say read, and this is not just our applicants. I have found in this work, a lot of people don't read the emails, they don't read the instructions, they don't read the tools that are given to them. So reading our instructions, we give pictures, we give arrows. If you click here, you can get to this. So reading the instructions, reading the tools provided to you. A lot of times we will offer additional links to things that will give even more context to what we're looking for. And then we offer what we call technical assistance days or hands-on labs. Take advantage of those. We literally sit here waiting for you to come in and ask us questions or tell me you don't understand something about the application. It doesn't mean that you're going to automatically get funded because I don't make those funding decisions, but it will most definitely help you put forth the best application that you can put forth if you just utilize all those resources. I think we offer probably 5 or 6 hands-on labs where we will help you navigate the online tool. Yeah, I guess that's how I would suggest the most compelling application. Oh, the other thing I'll mention, we know that agencies in Nashville, they provide a plethora of services. What we really look for in applications, if you put too much in your application, it really is overwhelming for our application reviewers. Like if they're reading a 6 or 8 page application, by the time they get to the last page, they're like, what the heck did they say on page 2? So I would just really encourage you to focus on whatever it is. Maybe it is, we want to build capacity for this piece of work, or we want to fill a gap with this piece of work, or we just want to sustain this work because it's so important and we need funding to do that. So don't try to fit everything in this one application. Kind of decide the direction you're going to go and then go in that direction really well. Do not pick every outcome because then it's just a lot for a volunteer to try to absorb and understand. And they only have 20 minutes in that Q&A with you to fill in any of those gaps. So the more precise and specific you can be about what your ask is, the easier it's going to be for them to really understand what picture you're trying to paint. All right. I don't see any other questions. So we might just give you back 10 minutes of your day. Leticia and Felicia, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you everything that the Titans and Cap Financial do for United Way and our community. We are so grateful. And I think Cheryl will close the webinar for us. Parting words?
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.